yeah, so we are alone in our own space, so we're very well distanced, so Atlas and I can kind of take that off so we can be a little more animated, if you will. But hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Sparking Creativity here at CraterWorks MakerSpace. My name is Brian. I'm the membership coordinator. I am joined by my co-host, Atlas Newman. She's our marketing director and our social media guru. And I have a super awesome couple of guests here for you guys today. So we are joined by the team from Sonic. And Alice, why don't you introduce Sonic for us?
Awesome. So Sonic is an acronym for a nonprofit that is local to Rogue Valley. It stands for Southern Oregon Nutritional Innovation Center. And the people we have joining us today are essentially the founding members, board, grand conspirators that make this whole system work. We have TonTon, who has been in the food industry for quite some time. I'm sure he will expand on that. His steez is typically hummus, cookies, and all things gluten-free and delicious. We also have Paul. Paul has been working with Dreamosophy and his own myriad of many beautiful projects. Again, he will get into it as well. And then we also have Miss Heather, who is very much, as she says, working in that realm that is not necessarily the sexy side of small business incubation, but definitely the most necessary aspects as well, building the infrastructure. I definitely want to hand it off to these individuals and make sure that they have the opportunity to adequately toot their own horns and let you all know who they are and what they bring to the table. So TonTon, why don't you start by introducing yourself and what you've been doing in the industry of small business incubation and driving home some like quality food and truly helpful indulgence, as you might say.
Okay, so my name is actually Michael Antonopoulos. TonTon is an abbreviation of Antonopoulos. I learned most of my cooking skills in my mother's kitchen. I'm Greek. I learned the business of producing food at a worker-owned bakery in Athens, Ohio. And that gave me the foundation of understanding basic business skills. And I moved to Ashland. There's a long story in between Athens, Ohio and Ashland, and we'll leave that story for another podcast. I started TonTon's Artisan Affections in 2012. And I started basically because I was producing foods that I could eat. I had a pretty restricted diet that I was given by my Chinese medicine doctor to address a few health issues. So I started making foods that I could eat, and ended up starting TonTon's Artisan Affections because the community of people that I would cook for, besides myself, became very pushy with me, especially once I started bringing hummus to different events. So I started off selling the hummus at farmers markets. I started off producing my foods in a rental kitchen and selling my foods at farmers markets, which is where I did a lot of my research and development and as well as my basic marketing, and ended up in a few local stores, the co-op, shopping cart, and built it out from there. I work with one distributor, Rogue Natural Foods. And right now we're in about 20 stores between Mount Shasta and Portland, basically the I-5 corridor. I actually met Heather in 2012 doing a business accelerator program by Sustainable Valley Technology Group. And that's where her and I first connected. And let's see, so I moved out of the rental kitchen in 2015, settled on my own space. I'm a self-starter who makes emotional-based decisions. I didn't have the money completely lined up, but I had a plan that I thought would get funded, and things don't always go according to plan, but I'd already committed on the space. And so at 109 Talent Avenue in Talent, I began housing other food processors, with the only restriction being that they remain gluten-free. And so over the last 5 years, we've supported and incubated over 20 different businesses coming out of our kitchen. As of right now, there's 5 businesses, including TonTon's, with a 6th one getting ready to launch, and I can go into that a little bit. Yeah, and so we opened the doors to the front of the house in 2017, the end of 2017, as a vegan, gluten-free Mediterranean fusion cafe. We also started producing events and parties. The parties were really fun and successful. The cafe was a lot of work and not as successful. And this year, we stopped doing the events and shut down the cafe due to the pandemic. And that gave me more opportunity to work on the Southern Oregon Nutritional Innovation Center. And so,
yeah, blessings of the pandemic, right? There's been a lot of refocusing for people. It's really birthed some cool projects.
Yep.
Yeah, awesome. And then it's my understanding as well, at that 109 Talent Avenue location, that is now the headquarters of Sonic. That is that commissary kitchen where your other incubated small businesses, that's where they're working out of, correct?
Precisely, yes.
Cool. So got myself some talent representation. Awesome.
Yep.
Right on, right on.
Well, then I also, just so we can give some attention to our other 2 guests, Heather, why don't you give us a little bit of information about what you do, and then we'll pull Paul in as well, and then we'll have a larger conversation of what that means for the food revolution and incubation of food-related businesses.
Well, I have been working with startups for about a decade. I ran a record label on my own years and years ago for about 6 years. So I would say that I love working with creatives, but creatives like TonTon often make emotional-based decisions, and sometimes the nitty-gritty of building a foundation and an infrastructure, and oftentimes even the idea of revenue almost feels icky, right? The business side of doing something with your creativity sometimes, takes it to a different place. And so every entrepreneur needs a team around them. And so I think that's the opportunity with Sonic for sure, is to put a business development team around some of these creatives. The missing ingredient, and what I probably focused the last 6 or 8 years or so of my work, is really with investors. Investors often always want to invest in snappy tech companies that they think is going to be the next Google or Facebook, and there's a gaping hole available of capital and money to commercialize small local food businesses, and those are really who make our communities resilient. And now I think, and in future years after this, we may see a reemergence of passion around local food systems, and getting entrepreneurs and people using our resources that we have locally as maybe some of the supply chains start to break down even further. Not to be a doomsdayer, but this is a timely effort to have access to commercial kitchens and things. And it's just always been a passion of mine to have the little guy, I'll call it, or the little girl, to have some of these small players who, there's a magic in thinking small, there's a magic in thinking local, and that doesn't always translate to the way that the world works. And I think there's a lot of passionate investors and business development people and consumers who want this. It's just there's not been the infrastructure to support it. So that's why I'm involved in Sonic, and personal passion and community passion.
And TonTon, you touched on it very succinctly, I think, in saying, like, you have an opportunity here, and while it's not necessarily because of there's not a positive cause for it, but there can be positivity that comes out of it. And Heather, like you said, when we see like supply chains breaking down and things like that, that's a negative thing, but we can make a positive outcome out of that if we make the right decisions and work on developing local businesses and developing local resources and infrastructure.
Yeah.
And it's really cool too, because like I definitely caught your guys' first webinar episode of this regenerative series that you guys are doing, but like the name really caught me, of the role of food in regenerating local economies. And I think that really sets to what, Heather, you're saying in terms of that idea of this whole big world might be coming right back down to home, and us really figuring out some of these missing links right here at home locally, especially in such an agriculturally heavy area as Southern Oregon. So that's a really nice, like, silver lining view of things. And then Paul, do you want to go ahead and let us know what do you bring to the table? Because I know you dream big.
I do, thank you. My specialty is helping people realize their dreams. And food is a big part of staying healthy. So I started in restaurants and food related businesses back in the early 1970s when I managed a Greek restaurant and dance center in Los Angeles. And then in the 1980s, I moved to Aspen, and I managed hotels and resort condominiums and shopping centers there. And then in the late 80s and later into the 90s, I managed shopping centers in Northern California. I've really been interested in entrepreneurial development. So I've sat on the Aspen Resort Association board for years, and also sat on the Workforce Investment Board in Humboldt County on the north coast of California, where we started a food incubator. Yeah, we like Humboldt County.
I moved up to Southern Oregon from Eureka, so.
Nice.
Oh, that's great. Well, I was in Arcata and McKinleyville, and I managed the McKinleyville Shopping Center and the Eureka Mall for a while. Not the Bayshore Mall, but the Eureka Mall up on the hill.
No?
And so I come to this prospect of business development. I should say then, fast forwarding another 10 years, I helped start a business incubator in Longmont, Colorado. My older sister wrote a book called Natural Capitalism. It's all about redefining economy and how businesses can define themselves in not just financial responsibility, but benefit to the community. And I've been interested for decades in the concept of sustainability, which has now become regenerativity, because it's not enough just to be sustainable. You know, how'd your date go on Saturday night? Oh, it was sustainable. It doesn't really float people's boat, but regenerating economy and regenerating livelihood and regenerating community is something that I can really get behind. And so it was a logical transition for me to support TonTons and the development of Sonic as an investor and a donor. I'm the president of the board of the Southern Oregon Nutrition Innovation Center, and I'm really looking for people to join me in putting up money, not just 5 or 10, but $1,000 or $5,000 or $10,000 to foment a regenerative food-based economy in Southern Oregon. Yes. So that's a little bit. And then in my spare time, I'm really fascinated by dreams and the confluence between dreaming and waking, but we can talk about that another time.
And you've written a book. Where's your book? He's written a book. The Wisdom, I've got it right here.
Nice.
The Wisdom of Dreaming, yes. How to establish confluence between dream life and waking life.
It's really super fascinating, and maybe it's because I interact with maker spaces so much, but meeting people and having that conversation with people who dream so big, and it's like, no, this ship needs to be manned by many people besides just me. And in fact, sometimes you look at the deck and you realize the captain's just standing there doing nothing. It's all these other people that are really making things move. And it's the same with talking to you guys of the ability to build that container to incubate passions and dreams and do everything from the flashy to the infrastructure in the background. I find it so life-giving, and it's really great that you guys have this idea of regeneration within food, but also you're regenerating the idea of people taking back their ability to write their own stories and really like presenting opportunities. So
I'm really glad you mentioned that. Let me just kind of dovetail with that a little bit if I can, because in places like the Makerspace in Medford or Central Point there, and at Sonic, we're looking for a leverage point, what Buckminster Fuller used to call a trim tab, the little change that we can make that shifts paradigms. And so for decades, I've been talking about needing fundamental transformation at the institutional level. Broad, sweeping, fundamental transformation. How does that happen? How does the ocean get changed? How do fish get into the ocean? Well, the fish get into the ocean from the tide pools. A lot of people thinking about economic development and regenerating a local economy want to bring in a giant employer to employ 3,000 people in a big plant. Well, that's not actually how business happens. Business happens with little guys, little gals, little people starting up with something they're passionate about, their honey or their hot sauce or their gluten-free pita bread or their hummus. And it's one or two people struggling to get going. And you go to the bank and the bank says, oh, well, if you don't need the money, we'll be happy to loan you money. But if you need it, you don't qualify. And you go to the Small Business Administration and they say, well, let us help you get bankable so we can get you a $250 loan. I don't need a $250,000 loan. I need to pay my utility bill. I need to pay my insurance bill. And there aren't very many resources in the community to even stand shoulder to shoulder with these people who are grappling with daily affairs. And that's what floats my boat. I get excited about that.
Nice. So, how do you guys find yourselves in the like encouraging, empowering of these other businesses? I mean, like sometimes it might feel like you stand alone in your strong passion for regenerative practices and operations within food-oriented businesses. How do you find these individuals that now stock your kitchen and stock your Facebook page and website with these member profiles that are offering things that not only are similar to what you believe, but really do add to that fire of passion exactly in the manner that you've lit it yourself?
So a lot of it is done through word of mouth. There's only a handful of commercial kitchens available in town. Something that we've been able to offer as an added bonus is not just a static space to make your product, but from the beginning, for me, I've made it, the way I've understood it is, if I've already figured it out, I want to make sure that the people that I'm working with don't have to figure it out on their own. That's a waste of their energy. So I share what I've learned as soon as I'm able to. And what I've realized that we're doing with Sonic, and I was actually able to articulate this to a group of people that is about to do a startup at Sonic. We fill in the gap. And that's our role. And like Heather said, most entrepreneurs are visionary creative types. And I've recognized in people in general, people have what they're drawn to, and people have what they're repulsed from, and so that's why teams become really, really important, so that it creates a holistic system so that not one person has to play every role. Now I know I'm kind of jumping around a little bit, but I know with my experience in TonTons and what I've learned is that as the entrepreneur, I'm willing to do all the parts. I have to do all the parts. But as soon as I can find someone that can do one of my parts better than me and is willing to do it, whether that's for money or equity or because they love me, like if they're willing to do it and they're better than me, they've got the job. Yeah. And a lot of what we're offering with the Southern Oregon Nutritional Innovation Center is helping people sort out what it is that they're good at, helping them fill in the gap, and then helping them get the resources and the team behind them so that they can proceed with being their creative self.
Yeah. And isn't that such a big ticket to fill as like an actual small business incubator? And you're lucky enough, and as well with Heather and Paul, especially with your guys' stacked backgrounds, being able to bring knowledge to those people. Because I think we all know what it feels like standing at the bottom of a hill and looking up like, well, that's a pretty big hill to climb. And to have somebody loop their arm under yours and be like, oh, I've walked this hill before. Got you like that, And it takes everything from that vision to the spreadsheets and the transaction lists and everything in between. And it's nice when you can share that load with people. I love just kind of hanging out at CraterWorks and people will come around and, well, what do you think about this? And I'm like, well, that's actually my specialty. I can like do a shortcut for you and teach you real quick in 5 minutes what I've learned over 5 years. And it's satisfying for me. And it is like this like interweaving of, sweet, I got another person out in the field that isn't Walmart or Target, that isn't this big box company, and they were passionate about what they do and the way they do it. And it's cool that you guys, again, have that same opportunity to really lift up not just individuals, excuse me, but standards of production, standards of living as a small entrepreneur or small business entrepreneur in this day and age where every day is a question,
Yeah, and I'm
everybody-
reminded of the guy I talked with a few years ago who started a big composting program in Seattle, up in the Pacific Northwest in Washington. And I said, Dan, how have you accomplished this? You have all these facilities, you have in-vessel composting and hedgerow composting and small compost mulch piles. How'd you get it all done? He said, oh, we're way beyond doing more with less. We do everything with nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the way it is for entrepreneurs getting started.
Yeah, and honestly, that's that mindset of like, well, if I have nothing, I have my passion. I'm doing it.
Right. Right. And
I think there's a huge change upon us that has been coming, and I don't know what the results of that are going to be, but I really feel like it's going to push everything back hyper local. And that is this idea of the sharing economy. I mean, I think, and I don't know the number off the top of my head, but last year alone, something around 300,000 stores across the country have closed. That was last year, just in 2019. And these are all your big box stores, your TGI Fridays, your things that are chains that are, not sustainable, big, heavy overhead, all of that kind of thing. And consumer tastes are changing, and at the same time, you have all these scrappy innovators who are out there on the bleeding edge of this, trying to make something happen. And I think, to Paul's term of confluence, I think investors, innovators, creatives, and those that like to do systems work are all going to be coming together at the local level. And, there's been insights of that. There's been attempts at it, but now more than ever, it's going to catch wind, I think. And, we've seen just in the Valley, just from the makerspace side of things, and small artists and manufacturing and technology is a side of that where, food is just an outlet of that. Either way, that perfect storm takes a lot of nurturing, I'll say. You can't force it, right? You have to kind of hold the space and let people come to it and do it anyway. And that's what entrepreneurs do so well, is do it anyway.
we had Ryan Wilcoxon on last episode from Talent Maker City, and he used a phrase that I just love. I'm totally stealing, but he calls it, he's building a maker ecosystem here in the Rogue Valley, here locally. Like his whole mission is to build this ecosystem of people who want to make stuff and build stuff and do things for themselves instead of just ordering it off of an online store or going to a big box store to buy it. He said he wants to build that ecosystem. You guys are like also in that triangle of like awesome spaces getting built that are letting people start to explore that self-sufficiency aspect.
And even in this time of pandemic, before the pandemic, this year we had one business that started up at 109 Talent Avenue at Sonic. Since the pandemic, there's been two others that have started. And we have a third business that I'd actually like to tell you a little bit about it, because Atlas helped us create a post on social media calling out this opening for a coffee house opportunity. We've got the equipment there. And we had a number of people respond. And it made me realize that as the role of Sonic, I don't want to have us decide who gets to be the entrepreneur. And so my strategy was, well, maybe these people, because I know from my own experience, if I had someone that was my partner at the start of TonTon's, life would have been a lot easier. And so, and I'm not telling so I arranged for 3 different people to meet. And yesterday they met for the first time. And I explained to them that you don't have to go into business with each other, first of all. This is just an opportunity to see if there's a synergy. And if there is, maybe you want to collaborate. And it worked out to where there's 3 different people from 3 different backgrounds that with 3 different skill sets that we're really excited about the opportunity to work together. And at this point, we're exploring creating a worker-owned co-op coffee house at Sonic.
Oh, awesome.
And yeah, it's really exciting.
I smell a throwback to maybe where you started in Athens, Ohio.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's what I know,
Yep.
And,
Come back to
I didn't start the company at Crumb's Bakery, but I learned a lot. I learned a lot about business and collaboration. In fact, that's all I knew until I left Athens.
Yeah. I really like what you said, about you don't want to decide who gets to be an entrepreneur. And that's how I feel about CraterWorks, and I feel about probably you guys too. We're not the gatekeepers. We're the pathfinders. We're the people that can like kind of help you along in your in that pursuit. In that we know barriers, and Heather, you know barriers, and TonTon, you know things that you've learned from Hard Knocks and building businesses, and Paul, you know stuff from managing and things like that. You know those barriers that people will face, and you have a chance now to to kind of show people the way and show them the easier path around things. It's really exciting, really awesome to hear.
And
Once in a while, it's actually a credit to be an old guy. I've made a lot of mistakes.
You've had some
have a lot of
time.
knowledge.
And in these uncertain times, it is just so important and to be able to empower people to not be afraid of what's happening around them, to actually see what can be and is opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and this is another throwback to our last guest, Ryan, but one of the things that he said that I really liked about these kind of makers ecosystems is it's also building a space for people to fail safely. I think some people, especially with how scary the world is right now, they get so scared to try to reach out, and it's people with experience, people with presence, kind of like what Sonic brings to the table, that can build a container, by no means insulated. We're not trying to make somebody, experience an unrealistic virtue of always being successful, but to create a container where they can try and fail. Because, you have to suck at something before you're good at it. And if you can suck at something in good company, it'll be that much easier to make that second step. So I like the idea of not only do you bring the knowledge, but you bring the opportunity.
And I was just going to go there, Atlas. It's funny. I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of entrepreneurs over the years. And, maybe this will sound critical on the existing support ecosystem for businesses. And I'm okay with that because it's the truth. They feel very beaten down when they go around to the system and ask for help. I think TonTon would probably agree that it's tough out there to be told you're not good enough, you're not good enough, you're not good enough. And you hear that enough times, and at some point you start to lose faith and hope in your own creative spirit. And where is the support system that believes in this spirit of creativity, and how can we create one that has fresh perspective, fresh eyes? So that, it's hard to be told no, again, not just by business advisors, and not just by investors, not just by banks, but by even consumers and by stores and by supply chains. And you're not big enough, you're not good enough. I mean, it's really tough, especially in food. And it just is what it is.
Yeah, with a lot of startups, you're always not enough of something, right? So you go to a loan, you're not big enough. You go to the SBDC, you're not small enough. You go to places, you're not enough of this, you're not enough of that. You're not doing the right thing, and it's always hard to get into those larger systems because you are what you are, and you can't necessarily be like the cookie cutter rubber stamp that banks necessarily want you, or bigger systems necessarily want you to be.
And hopefully I'll start being a bit more generous with our time and our belief, right? Not to be so transactional, like, hey, what's in it for me if I share what I know with you? Let's just share what we know. Generosity leads all boats. This, it rises all tides, right? I said that totally wrong, but there is a cool saying there. But it makes everybody better, and we all live in this community. And you never know. There's some magic about creating this ecosystem work that I find really inspiring. You asked earlier, how do you find people? How do people show up? How do you find people? And I think I have no idea. I mean, I don't. Some people just show up. And when they do, what do they find? What's their experience? And are we helping them grow or not? And we don't want to be the ones telling people no.
Yeah, and it's beautiful too, because once you get yourself into a makerspace, everyone else on the outside of the doors may have told you you're not this, this, and this, your passion isn't big enough, or whatever it is. And you walk into the makerspace with that one bowl that you turned on the lathe, and everyone's gonna be like, this is the coolest bowl ever. This one bowl, you need an Etsy shop. I'm gonna buy one for my mom. Like, there's so much passion, and it's just like that relatability. I mean, I don't know anyone that's a multi-millionaire that owns a big box company, but I know 100 small business owners, 100 entrepreneurs, and 1,000 more people with dreams in their minds and their hearts that they know can go somewhere if our system were a little different. And it's making these communities, these ecosystems, that is going to change that system and make it easier for people in the future to be able to say, you know what, I think I have a way this should be done, and I'm going to open some doors for people to be able to do it with me, that kind of thing. So, yeah. Brian, how's your time looking?
We're looking pretty good. So why don't we kind of start winding things back a little bit and saying, you know, where can we find you guys? Where can we hit you guys up? If somebody out here somebody out in podcast land is watching this and says, hey, I want to jump on that train, how can they get with you?
Well, as of now, our most active social media is on Facebook at So Nutritional. Look up Sonic, the Southern Oregon Nutritional Innovation Center. You'll find us. We also have a website in development, and what is the URL for that, Atlas?
It should be www.sonutrition, I believe.
It's So Nutritional, isn't it?
I work so much more on your page than your URL. I was given a URL. So it's either sonutrition.com or sonutritional.com. It's also, if you hit the .org, it bumps you over to the .com as well. It should be So Nutritional, though, I believe.
It should be, but it is sonutritional.com.
Okay.
Ooh, there we go. Totally.
Wait, there's a hyphen in there, though.
Oh,
sorry,
right.
It's so-nutrition.org. Let's get this right from the outset.
There we go.
There we go.
so-nutrition.org.
Okay.
But you guys are most active. Like, if somebody wanted to, like, you know, click play to this podcast, listen to it, get stoked about either connecting with you guys as being a member, a donor, an investor, or anything like that, they should hit you guys up on Facebook specifically.
Facebook, or also an email to sonutritional@gmail.com.
Cool.
And we are willing to talk about supporting other entrepreneurs. If you've got a food or product idea, we, along with the basic production, we are there to support you with label creation, with finding an insurance company, getting licensed with the Department of Agriculture, getting distribution and what it takes, pricing strategies to account for future distribution,
Nice.
those type of things. In addition to our in-house services, we're also creating a seal that we're calling So Vital, and we are opening up the Southern Oregon Nutritional Innovation as a resource to other food entrepreneurs in the Rogue Valley, if they fit within our qualifying set of standards. And through the membership in So Vital, they'll be marketing, they'll be being able to be part of co-op packaging pricing.
Mm-hmm.
And we are also creating a suite of foods under that label that we can then bring to distributors so that they can select from the So Vital line of products.
And it is my understanding that you guys have a pretty wide spectrum of businesses that are your founding member profiles, correct? You've got like a hot sauce company, a CBD company, a mushroom company. I might know these already, but I'm making it sound like a question.
Totally. Absolutely. Those are 3 of our in-house companies at the moment.
There's also Stone's Jamaican Roots and Juice, which
Stone's
is
Jamaican Roots and Juice. And they're
Yeah.
open Thursday, Friday, Saturday from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. with live music on the patio Friday and Saturday.
nice.
And they're doing really well. It's amazing seeing these businesses actually thriving in the middle of this, in the middle of this really uncertain time.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't get a chance to really touch on what are your guys' kind of standards and practices when it comes to not just your kitchen space, but your label and your seal. What you were talking about. Mm-hmm. So what are some of those standards?
So we are looking at, I think we're still developing this.
Okay.
And the primary, one of the, importance of local foods is a priority, and minimizing the miles between ingredients. So we're looking at produced with ethics, the ethics being non-GMO as a bare minimum, ideally organically produced, ethically harvested and sourced. And then we're also looking into packaging. And this is separate, but I just have to say one of the biggest challenges of being a food producer right now that I face is the fact that the #1 plastics, which used to be recyclable, or they told us, are now ending up in the landfill. And as a food processor, my heart is getting broken on a daily basis. And that is something that as a society, we need to solve as soon as possible, what to do with all this plastics.
Yeah, for sure.
And let me just comment a little bit about what we consider to be the principles and practices of regenerative food system.
Yeah.
Because as I mentioned earlier, it's no longer enough to do no harm. Obviously, everybody prefers to do that, but human beings have badly messed up the natural systems upon which our lives depend, and also our social systems and our cultural traditions. And so it's not enough just to not bother anybody else. Those of us who want to regenerate the economy, to create a vibrant economy in Southern Oregon with food as one of the touch points, are committed to regenerating the vitality and the value of daily life. And that starts with being healthy, with having food that is nutritious and wholesome and grown locally in sustainable and regenerative ways that regenerate the soil, that leave the water cleaner than it came in, that produce clean, breathable air. Those are regenerative values, but also Black Lives Matter. We need to stop practicing racism and welcome people into our community and create institutions that are non-discriminatory, that are anti-bias, and not, and obviously that ripples out into many other prejudices and stereotypes and biases that keep us from having a vibrant, diverse economy. Nature's diverse. There's no ecosystem naturally that has only one plant. It has lots of different plants. Plants don't flower in only one color or at one time of year. It's diverse. And so that's part of what we define as regenerative, is are we caring for each other and for the natural systems upon which our lives depend in ways that make the world a better place. That sounds platitudinous, but it's a platitude worth living by.
Yep.
I heard Paul, I heard a really good analogy that's kind of akin to that. Just touching on what you were saying is, if you bake a cake and you forget and mix up the salt and the sugar, that cake will never be sweet. You have to rebake the cake. And I feel like that's a place where we're coming to now, where, and it kind of ties into your idea of regeneration, in that sometimes you have to rebake the cake. Sometimes you made a mistake, and it's important to recognize that. And if you bring that cake to a party, everybody's going to get a mouthful of salt.
You
You know,
can't
and
just cover it in frosting and expect that to be the Band-Aid that fixes that cake.
It's time to regenerate our systems.
yeah, I
As
love
a baker, I would have to say time to make 10 times the quantity of the cake, so that the salt measures right, and just feed a bunch more people.
it. That's fantastic. That is so
I
cool.
just want to plug in one last call to action that I know these guys are putting on, and they've got a lot on their plate, so I don't know if it may have slipped. But in the idea, if anyone is interested in this regenerative idea and approach that Paul is specifically talking about, that TonTon and Heather is, they are doing a webinar series specifically around regenerative practices. Their second episode is coming up here in mid-September. I believe it is the 17th of September. It should be
Thursday.
And it's with Woody Tash. He's the founder of Slow Money, and he's going to be sharing an intro, a prologue to his new book, which I got to peek at it. It's really relevant, really pertinent. He touches on amazing things that are in our lives right now, and it is all centered around the idea of regenerative practices. It's an online event. You can watch it from the comfort of your home. It's completely free, and you're going to be fed even more from this bountiful table about the practices that revolve around regenerative approach to life and food-oriented businesses.
Yeah, and information for that is on our Facebook page, facebook.com/so-nutritional.
All right. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for for coming on and being awesome community partners, and being willing to share with us, what you have going on, and being part of the maker ecosystem we're trying to build with Ryan and TMC, and now you guys, and I just feel so honored to be here at CraterWorks and being able to work with people like yourselves, and get to amplify some voices and have an opportunity for that. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
adios.
We'll see you guys next time on Sparking Creativity. So have a good night. Have a good weekend.